Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hello and welcome to Businessline podcast. I'm your host, Jyothi Banthia. Today we talk about the startup ecosystem. As we close the year, we look at the trends that influenced the ecosystem in the last year and things to look forward for in the next year. To talk more about that, we have Jinesh Shah from Omnivore VC, who will shed more light on this. Hi Jinesh, how are you?
Hi, Jyoti. I'm good. Hope you are doing well. How are
I'm
things?
doing Yes, I'm doing well too. So let's dive right into the podcast. I wanted to understand from you what were the standout funding trends in 2024 and how have the startup ecosystem shaped in 2024?
Look, I mean, 2024 was an interesting year, right? We all came with a hangover of slowdown from 23. We were hoping that things would get well, but it turned out 2024 was a very good year, right? I mean, quite a focus on investments happened across various sectors within the country. From a specific perspective, from an omnibus perspective, I mean, we got decent interest in the sector of AgriTech, climate, and rural sustainability. We also saw that, I mean, in 24, we saw a higher trend where people are starting to invest into beyond the traditional areas of metro in the 2 or 3 regions in the country. But now we see a lot of startup entrepreneurs coming from the smaller cities and smaller towns, and they are trying to solve a problem which is relevant for those aspects. And we're seeing investment in that. I mean, that's something which is very interesting. Also, we saw government also putting out policies and efforts, which in turn is helping to drive innovations across various sectors. I mean, the 2024 has been a good year where people have started focusing on doing simple things of providing sustainable business, providing scalable solutions, and hopefully create an impact, right? I mean, this is a good development in 24. I mean, that's what I would say around it.
Okay. Which sectors do you see that had gained traction in 2024? And which sectors do you think will keep seeing the 2025 attraction from investors? What are the new surprising sectors that you feel are going to emerge in 2025?
Look, I mean, there's a good focus and discussions around climate solutions and problems, right? I mean, the world recognizes that as a species, we have a big problem in hand. So there's a lot of focus on climate solutions. Look, I think the various sectors where sustainability is getting involved, those are all under focus. From a fund perspective where Omnivore is involved, we see a decent traction in the agri-tech and the rural development. That is what we continue to see. Climate will get more and more focus. We see more funding towards climate. At the same time, I mean, from a India specific thing, we believe that there is a renaissance of manufacturing coming back in the Indian ecosystem, right? And we will see a lot more investments happening where there is manufacturing would be involved. So creating jobs around those, creating sustainability around those, that would be a big thing. Also, I think the government is also focusing on providing solutions towards the rural credit, right? They are rewriting the laws, putting guidance in place, but encouraging to get rural financing and rural credit in place. I think overall we see sectors where there's an innovation, sectors where there is climate solutions, sector where we're trying to solve the food security and food processing, those will see a continued focus around it. I think this is what investors are looking around it. Look, but I think these are interesting trends, but I think what will really evolve, I think we'll only come to know over a period of time. I mean.
Okay. In terms of funding stages, how do you think has the early stage, mid stage, and the late stage funding evolved in 2024, and how do you see that evolving in 2025?
I think the 2024 was a year where a lot of things surprised us. I mean, we saw a higher amount of funding in across stages, whether it's early stage, later stage, or mid stage. We see it. I think 2025 would be even a better year with more and more investors putting more capital. I mean, while 2024 we saw investors putting capital, but there's a lot more dry powder still available. And I think that would be utilized in 2025 to make investments. I think we are seeing more exits. And I think that gives additional confidence for investors to take bets. Right now, few of them are still sitting at the sides, but I think in 2025, I'm sure they would also join the momentum, right? So we will see a lot more investments happening around it. But I think we having some caveat, right? I think investors are not going to invest in companies which have been growing for sake of growth till now, right? They would try to invest in companies which are creating sustainable solutions, creating profits, creating momentum where they're able to create a sustainable business and hopefully have a positive impact on the climate as well as governance and sustainability of the country. I mean, we believe that this is the areas where things will move forward. I mean.
Okay. So I would like to understand in terms of the VC ecosystem, how do you see that has evolved? You spoke about dry powder. What about the risk appetites of the VCs itself? We have seen a lot more new funds that have come up in 2024. How do you see the VC ecosystem has evolved from 24 and moving into 25?
I think it's all mirroring to how the startup ecosystem is evolving, right? We see more and more startups coming in the Indian markets. We are seeing more and more diverse kind of startups, right? People who are focusing on, I mean, few years ago it was only tech-based startups, and tech would be focusing on either information technology or telecom, I mean, those kind of a solutions, all about saying, can we digitize things? But now we are seeing startups focusing on solving problems like saying, how can I get better processing in the country? How can I reduce the import dependency? There is also geopolitical situation evolving where there is a focus where India is getting more share in the manufacturing and the supply chain integration in the world. I think we'll see more startups coming in, and as a result, we are seeing more and more VCs coming. Like when there is a demand, there is always going to be supply. So VCs who have been trying to raise capital in 24 and have raised, some of them have raised successfully. I think they are willing to look at newer sectors, newer way of looking at things. That is going to make more things more interesting, right? I mean, these are people who have not been part of the as a GP still now, but have worked with either VCs or have been entrepreneurs or professionals working in the corporate life. They are trying to solve specific problems in a specific manner. I think that's going to be interesting. We are seeing more specialized VCs focusing on deep tech solutions. I mean, we are seeing sector-specific funds coming up. So I think this is where VCs are also evolving. And I think once you have more specialized VCs making investments, I think we'll see a lot more innovative ideas getting funded and a lot more innovative business models getting funded. I think one thing I want to add here is that I think we in India see there's a lot of inefficiency in the entire process is what we follow in the country. I mean, India has been doing well, but we still have inefficiencies across various value chains. I think we'll see a lot of VCs also focusing on reducing those inefficiencies and making the sector and the country more efficient about doing things. I mean.
Absolutely. Also, in terms of exits, if you could talk a little bit about exits, how do you see the exit evolving right now? Do we see IPO gaining a lot of traction, or the secondary markets, M&As? How has that sector performed?
Look, I think IPOs definitely in 24 showed the way, right? A lot more startups got IPO exits. I mean, some which had waited for a very long time also got their exits. We have seen more momentum in the SME IPO exits. I think we also see a lot of family offices and high net worth individuals trying to invest in the early before the IPO exits as well. At the same time, I think M&A activity in the mid markets is getting momentum in the country. We also see quite a few secondaries funds in getting active in the Indian markets. I mean, we had read some news about some secondaries funds trying to launch an India dedicated fund, right? So all those things, I believe, is giving an indication that in 2025 and going forward, we will see more and more exits happening. Not everything is going to be IPO, but some M&A and lot more secondaries. That's what my sense is.
In terms of wanting to understand the challenges from 24 that will move into 25, of course, we saw a very high dip in terms of like in 21, where the funding and the money was available so readily. And 23 saw a tapering of it, 24 saw a revival a little bit. What do you make of 25? How are we going to enter 25 in terms of challenges within the startup ecosystem itself?
Look, I think we are seeing a trend where VCs have become selective in making investments. I mean, the follow-ons are also selective, right? So business models which are not sustainable, not scaling, or not solving genuine problems would find it difficult to raise capital from newer investors. I believe that existing investors keep following on, but getting new capital is going to be a challenge. We will also see the valuations not going up the way we saw in 22 and 21, right? We would still think the valuations would be reasonable, where both the entrepreneurs and VCs have a win-win situation. I think we will see a lot more focus on business models which are more economically viable and are trying to solve things. At the same time, I believe that Indian regulations are converging to the global standards, right? And so I believe that business models will also evolve to that. So I think this is going to be a very interesting year where we have seen some momentum of funding happening in 24, but we also seen the regulations getting evolved around it. I think there is an increased dialogue between the government, regulators, and the ecosystem stakeholders, including the entrepreneurs and investors. So we will see a lot more dialogues, but and when there are dialogues, there is always some uncertainty how things are going to fall going forward. So this is where it's going to be interesting. So I believe that most of the entrepreneurs will focus on creating sustainable businesses, get more visibility, and once you have visibility, they'll start triggering growth at higher rates. I mean, that's my sense.
Okay. Also, what advice would you give entrepreneurs and startup founders who are probably now gearing up to probably look for funds and for funds in the market, looking to capitalize on emerging opportunities? What advice would you give them?
Look, I think every entrepreneur has its own journey, right? I think trying to understand what has happened in the past and trying to replicate that, it's not really helpful. My advice is to keep focused on adding value to your stakeholders, including your customers and the shareholders. Keep creating profits and ensuring that you are growing in a sustainable manner. I think it's very easy to get swayed by a lot of noise in the newspapers and media and the social media. But when you're doing business, you need to be focused on doing what your goal is, right? I mean, everyone likes to grow at and see and based on what others are doing it. But when you start your business, you need to create your own journey and be dogmatic about that focus. I think people who lose that focus and start replicating what others have done it, I think they just lose their way in journey, right? So if you are focused on doing what you are doing and you are diligent and keep being focus on that aspect for years and years, I think you'll solve a problem.
Yeah.
But always remember that when you are trying to make profits, you should always remember that your employees and the customers and the country as a whole should also benefit, right? I mean, it's not going to work out where you individually make profit and the others don't get benefit. And if you follow these directions, I think you will do well. That's the only advice I can give.
Okay. Jinesh, thank you so much for the conversation. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in into Business Science Podcast, and we hope to see you again very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and you have a great day too.